So when you come down onto your back, allow your body to first get settled to the ground. And a couple of places to observe how you're relating to the ground physically is if when you lie flat with your feet, with your knees bent, if the back of your neck gets really short or the bottom of your ribs flare up, or both of those things happen, then I'm going to suggest that you gather a blanket and create some bolstering. So it doesn't have to be a lot to be effective. Kind of want to find what the minimal amount is, but minimal could mean a lot. So that when you're feeling your body rest and yield to the earth, the back of your neck is long and a feeling of fullness along the back of your waist can be sensed. And then from here, you can decide how you want to go about with your legs. So a lot of folks really like starting out in what's called constructive rest pose, which is keeping your knees bent, but then allowing them to drop in. Others might find that they want to create a lot of length in their legs because they're doing a lot more sitting and they want to release at the back of the legs. So you can also be in basically a shavasana here if needed. And just check though, if you straighten your legs, if that does anything to your neck or your ribs, and you might need to change the height of the bolster. So then let your eyes, if you're comfortable with that, let your eyes close and place your hands right now below your belly button so that they're resting on your abdomen closer to your pelvis. And if your arms don't settle well here, where you feel like you have to like hold them up and stressful, then you can also take your block and place it there. So basically we're looking for some kind of feedback with your hands or with a prop. And then let your eyes, like I said before, close if that's a comfortable place for you. And we're going to spend some time watching our breath. Just like you might slow down enough in your yard or with your plants or whatever to really take note, this is the time to do that with your breath. And as you breathe in, send your breath as far down to your hands or to the block that you can. And observe as you're doing that, is this something that you're doing with a sucking in motion, like you're sucking up through a straw, trying to get whatever's coming up through the straw? If that's your tendency, then see if you can make it more of an opening. So just like a plant or a flower will blossom open when it feels the heat of the sun, feel the weight of your body against the ground and let your body be filled by breath. So that doesn't mean that you're doing nothing. What it actually means is that you're creating space by relaxing. And then you can add, right now we're just kind of focusing on our inhales, but when you do take an inhale in, add a little bit more volume by widening your abdomen. So not just up into your hands, but out into the rim of your pelvis, the bowl of your pelvis. And now add a little bit of intention on your exhale. So inhales yield to widen so that your breath can actually move more as if it's water seeping deeper into soil. But then when you exhale, really focus on moving the breath out. So as much as you yield on your inhale and create space and more volume, on your exhale, draw everything back in. So you can feel now your prop or your hands lifting up on your in-breath, in-breath, and lowering down on your out-breath. So the first place we're really focusing on movement is our breath. Because without breath, we know there's no life, and our breath facilitates more nourishment for plants, trees, and so forth. So having good quality breath is good for all ecosystems. So now move your hands up a little bit higher. So now instead of being below your navel, they're a little above your navel, and you can also do it with the block. Place your hands on the bottom ribs, your bottom ribs. And I'm going to get a little more specific about how you place them. So instead of having your thumbs on the front, move your hands wider. And you couldn't do this with the block, but move your hands around so that your thumbs are hooked a little bit around the back of your waist. And so we're going to add a layer in. So now, not just in your low belly, but in your mid ribs or your mid waist, try to widen into your hands. So every inhale, relax and let the breath fill you up. And when you exhale, bring everything back in. And as you're inhaling, notice if your ribs want to lift away from the ground. Temper that if it's happening for you, so that the widening is more in the back, in the sides. And you might be feeling some wild edges. Your breath, you might need to yawn or breathe in through your mouth if you're finding you're at a capacity that's unfamiliar. It's uncharted a little bit. So this isn't about getting to a better place or a better breath per se. It's about noticing where the edges are and spending a little time there. Take a few more breaths like this. And now the last place to take your hands is, I wouldn't really suggest the block here. Hands are probably a little more comfortable. But above, at the top of your chest, so right around where your collarbones are. And so you have lung tissue that goes all the way up behind your collarbones. A lot of times when folks don't have a full diaphragmatic breath pattern, they'll breathe more through this upper portion, but it's shallow breathing. So let's add now the upper chest in relation to the lower half, the lower portion. So as you breathe in, three-dimensional breath, down, wide, and full. And it's totally fine if you find that this is uncomfortable. I'm sure everybody's had experiences where they're working outside in less than ideal conditions and there's a discomfort, and yet you find yourself still wanting to be there. Let's take one more breath like this. And then you can start to move yourself, let go of your real focused attention on your breath. So open attention now and move in any ways that you feel you're called to move. So I call it a good morning stretch because that's kind of when people are most likely to be doing that kind of free expressed motion without any particular goal associated other than feeling good. So this is your invitation now to do just that. You might come close and pull yourself in or stretch yourself away, any of those. And now let's roll either to the side or through center. Come on up. And shift your self onto your hands and your knees. So if you need to pad your knees with anything, blanket or something, go ahead and do just that here. And you're gonna come onto all fours. And now as you're on all fours, sorry, I just realized I left my notes over here. As you're on all fours, let your body shift a little bit right, shift a little bit left, shift a little forward, shift a little bit back. And then eventually let that start to unfold into more of a circling motion. So the circling is really around your wrists and a little bit of your hips. So you might feel like your femur bones, your thigh bones are kind of circulating around each hip socket. And see how far into the edges of your hands and shifting back into your legs and hips, and then change the direction. And as you're doing this, keep your neck long on all sides. So notice if you're trying to look at the camera or at the screen, it's really nothing up here to do unless you're just needing a reference point. So let your neck be long, your gaze is kind of more down. Okay, and then come back to a stillness. And if you need to adjust so you feel stable, go ahead. And now we're going to work into some, we call it cat-cow in yoga, but I sometimes reference it a little bit differently here. But more from the perspective of our hips, okay? So even though cat-cow is a full spinal motion, we're primarily just going to focus on our pelvises right now. So if you need to, if you can't really sense this motion, you can also put your blanket, you can fold that up and place it on the back of your pelvis, just to give you that feedback sense. So it might be a little awkward when you start to motion yourself, but once you feel it, you can take it away. So again, come to a neutral position of your spine, and now move your pelvis so that if you do have a blanket on, it feels like you're trying to let it slide off the back of your hips. Okay, and now motion the opposite way where your pelvis tilts so that if you had a blanket on it, it would slide towards your lower spine. So we're just focusing on the motion at our hips. And the tendency will sometimes be to push up through your arms and add your upper back. And so that's not a wrong tendency, it's just more than you actually need to be doing right now. So do less to really feel the motion happening at your pelvis. And so when I'm just gonna pretend like you all have a blanket just to give you that reference point. So if you had something on your pelvis, when the blanket would slide down the back of your thighs, that motion is called pelvic tilt, or excuse me, pelvic tuck. And then when, as if the blanket was gonna slide along your low spine, your low back, that would be a tilt. Those are the points that I'll just use, or language I'll use to help you navigate this. So tuck your pelvis and tilt your pelvis, and notice which way your body senses kind of the map for that. So is it easier to let your pelvis tilt or tuck, or do you find when you're tucking there's a range that you can move into, but then to do more you have to push through your spine? Right? So you're just getting what's your usable, available range of your pelvis. Okay, and then pause. And you can, if you have the blanket, you can go ahead and move that off, and then sit back. So point your feet and sit back so you're just on your knees, and you can just shake out your arms, do whatever you want. Shake your wrists fast, or do some big arm circles, or sweep in front. So if you haven't taken a class with me before, I have a direction, but I give a lot of room for exploration. So I give you suggestions, and then there's part of that is for you to figure out what's going to make the most sense. And I find that especially in online format, it works better because I can't see everybody all the time. So having that your own agency is a really important aspect of this learning style. Okay, so now come back and gather up 2 blocks. So one of the things that I find with just living the way we live in a kind of sedentary culture is that we don't get a lot of variety in the way our bodies move. We tend to walk kind of flat and level all the time, and even with our motions of where our hands and our arms exist, kind of in that front plane. So I like to add a lot of variety, and this is one example of that. So now take your right hand onto the block, one block you have, and your left knee on the other block. You can also have a blanket in place of one of the blocks if you don't have 2 blocks. And then you'll notice, first, set your thighs so that they're even to each other. So your right thigh and your left thigh are on the same plane. And then let your right knee and left hand come down to the floor. And you'll notice right off the bat that you're not centered. Right? You'll be kind of shifted into one side or the other. So remember those circles we did a few moments back. Play around with that here. You might notice that the circle is more heavily leaning to probably, I'm going to guess, your right side. But see if you can kind of push into, you might notice that your left hip will have more of the sense of the circular pattern because it's higher up. You might feel that more integrated into your hip. And then go the other direction of your circle. And again, you'll observe here where the edges, where it might not feel quite so fluid or familiar. Yeah, and then pause and come back to your center. Now we're going to do that same pelvic tilt. But we have, if you took one hand and felt back there, you'd feel one hip higher than the other, your left hip higher than your right. That's the point. That's some of the point here. So now play around with tucking and untucking your pelvis. And again, it's not wrong if you add spinal motion, but observe if that's just happening because you're not really feeling it in your pelvis. So if you're adding it intentionally because you're like, it just really feels good and I want to do it, by all means. But if you're noticing that it's happening because there's less motion in your pelvis, see if you can play with that a little bit more and develop an attunement to this particular area of your body. And then come to neutral, and we'll switch sides because now you have your pelvis is actually made of mainly 3 bones, which means you have a right side and a left side, and then the sacrum in the center. And oftentimes we don't get this ability of our pelvis to have one forward and one back, and then motion front and back. So we're kind of doing a lot of subtle work here right now, but you'll see how it plays out when we do some other things. So keep your hands on the block, left hand on the block, right hand on the block, right knee on the block, left knee on the floor. And then again, do a little bit of that circling motion around. And again, you might sense that your right hip may have more of a integrated feeling, or just the thigh bone is more up into your hip socket. Make sure you switch sides. Okay, and then pause And now let's do a little tilt. So let your pelvis stick up, or I should say if you have the blanket would slide towards your lower back. And then the opposite way, as if the blanket was going to slide down your knees. And trying to articulate that from just your hips. And so even though we're on all fours and we're focusing mainly on our hips, just to give a little bit of attention to your upper body here, every time you move your pelvis, you might notice that subtly, so when your back goes into, or your pelvis goes into the tilt, your hands can squeeze towards your knees isometrically, and when your pelvis tucks under, you can push your hands away. So there's this push-pull, and that will actually maybe drive the motion a little bit more specifically or more deeply into your pelvis. So notice how even though the movement is generating from your hips, there's a relationship through your arms. They're not neutral here. And then go ahead and tuck your toes, sit back, take the blocks out of the way. And once again, you can either tuck your toes for a different stretch across your feet, because we sat on the tops of your feet before, so you can try this one. If that doesn't work, just point your feet. And then one more time, go ahead and shift and stretch or shake out your arms. Okay, and now keep yourself, if your feet are pointed and you're sitting on the tops of your feet, come forward and tuck your toes under. Okay, and everybody have your fingertips down on the floor so that your hands are close to your knees. So walk your hands back a little bit. And as you walk your hands back close to your knees, you may start to notice how your spine has to flex a little bit. So your pelvis will flex under, tuck under, and your spine flexes a little bit. So this is one of those things that I've been thinking about, like how we get up and down all the time when we're like leading or whatever, when we're close to the ground. This is something to have a lot of options and not just do the same one all the time. So this is one way that I love to come out of kneeling and so forth. So keep your hands close to your knees, and now push with your hands and shift your weight back onto the balls of your feet. Okay. And then keep your hands where they are and slowly shift your knees back down. And then push down through your legs and stand up. And when you're coming up to this kneeling vertical position, squeeze your glutes just a little bit, just to drive your pelvis forward. Now give a stretch through the front of your hips. Okay. And now hinge at your hips, move your hips back, pelvis towards heels. Take your fingertips down, again, mild flexion. And then push, lift your knees, shift your weight back. Some of you might be able to go all the way down to your heels. It's not necessary, but if you have that range and you want to explore it, go ahead. Okay, so we're going to do that a few more times. Bring your knees down, push down, stand up, a little bit of squeeze of your glutes to add that extra stretch. And now pelvis hinge at your hips, pelvis back, fingertips down, mild flexion. Shift your weight back onto the balls of your feet. Okay, and we're going to go through that one more time. So knees down, push down, stand up. And now this time, instead of moving your hips back first, you can play with shifting your weight all the way back. So now you're loading your feet with your whole upper body. Okay, and now place your fingertips down. Again, mild flexion. Push down, shift your weight back. Okay, so we're going to stay with this. We're going to add a couple more layers on. So shift forward, push down, stand on your knees, reach your arms up, and now either hinge at your hips or shift back with more of an upright spine, hips to heels, hands down, and now this time push a little more firmly and go up onto your feet. So now you're in a low kind of umpire squat. Okay. Now push down into your forearms, and this time tuck your pelvis under and flex your spine. So you come into that cat shape. And now pull, imagine you're trying to pull your elbows back towards your pelvis and arch your spine. So now we're doing the full spinal motion that we weren't doing before. Push down through your forearms, flex your spine. Pull with your elbows isometrically and extend your spine, back bend. And then one more time, push down, flex, let your head move with your spine, and then pull isometrically back and extend. Okay, now find neutral. So it's not one way or the other. In fact, if anything, it's a little bit of mild flexion. Reach your hands forward. Place your fingertips down, lift your heels up, and lower your knees down. Push down, stand on your knees, reach up, arch if you'd like. And now hips back, or either hinge or go straight back, hands to the floor. Push down, come to your umpire squat. Inhale, flex your spine. Exhale, arch your spine. Come to neutral. Reach forward. Bring your knees to the mat. We're going to do that one more time. Inhale, raise your arms up. Either hinge at your hips or go straight back into your feet, hands to the mat. Little mild flexion. Push down, heels to the floor, squat. Inhale, flex your spine. Exhale, arch your spine. This time come neutral. And now push straight down through your legs and stand all the way up. Reach your arms up. Exhale, you can let your arms just drop down to your sides. Okay, and if your legs feel like they need a little shake out, go ahead and shake out your legs. How is everybody doing? Does anybody have any questions? So I wanted to make this not just a straightforward, I'm going to just do the whole thing. I wanted to see if anybody had any specific questions. Okay. All right, so now come to grab one of your blocks. And we're going to, again, focus on the motion of our pelvis in relationship to what I'm going to call variable lands. So even though a lot of where we're currently residing in our homes and not maybe going outside and stuff, still though, generally speaking, we're on a lot of flat and level surfaces. But when you get out on like your yard even, it's not always flat and level. So go ahead and place your right foot. So I have the block down. Place your right foot on the block so your right heel is on the block. And you really feel like you're firmly on the block. And then bring your hands to your pelvis. And push down into your right leg until your left leg comes up. So now you'll be on your right leg. And if the balance is challenging, you can hold on to a wall or get a chair here to help you. Okay. And now push straight down through your right leg. Keep pushing through your right leg until your left leg feels like it can draw up. So I'm not bending at my hip. I'm trying to pull my leg up into my hip socket. And now lower your leg and let yourself toe and then heel come to the floor. Okay, and then you'll notice when your right knee is bent, your pelvis is more or less even, right, to a large degree. Okay, so now try that again. Push down into your right leg, rise up, and pull your left hip up. So again, that's different from leaning over with your spine. It's using your hip to lift your leg. And now lower your leg, toe, and then heel land. Okay, so now you have the kind of basics there. Now you can pick up your pace and add more if you want more speed. So push down, lift your hip, lower, toe, heel. Okay, so you're going to keep going like that. I'm not going to cue you that we're all moving at the same pace. All right, for some reason my Siri keeps going off. So keep playing with that. Toe, heel to land, push to lift, and observe as you're doing this. And your arms can start to do other things too. Like if you want to take them up and down, you can do that. If you want to bring them through center, that's all kind of, you get to choose the fancy. But as you're doing this, can you observe when you come up, are you leaning to the side? So are you taking your spine off center, your center of mass to do that, or is it a motion from your hips? Okay, and we're gonna stay with this, but now we're gonna add a little bit more dimension to it. So next time you step down, you might have to just be aware of where you have things. Go a little bit wider, and this time squats. So let yourself be 1 foot on the block, 1 foot on the floor, squat, and then push down and come back up. So your foot is gonna hover, and then you're gonna choose another spot and squat. And then push down and rise up. So you're gonna add this squat dimension, and this one you can also pick up your pace. Okay, so when you're standing on your right leg, you're doing a 1-leg balance. And even though I'm having you focus on pulling up through your left leg, the real stable place is the stability through your right leg. So being able to shift our weight from stable to, from 2 legs to 1 leg is a nice skill to have because, I mean, just in general. But to be able to turn and stand up and eventually maybe carrying something, right? So we don't want to like over micromanage every movement we do. But we want to be able to access movement when we're doing things that are more complex and that our body has it somehow mapped, in some regards mapped out. Okay? You're probably getting warm. All right, so next time you come up, pause, stand on your right leg, and now let's see if you can swing your left leg forward and back. So this one is called pendulum, and it will feel kind of like that. So you're trying to swing your left leg in front of your right, and then out to the left. And you'll notice your arms will probably have to join in for a little bit more balance. Good. And then you can pause and step down, and you can shake out your right leg, but then place both feet on the ground and take note of how it feels. So what is the sense, you can close your eyes, what is the sense of how your right leg feels versus your left leg? So you might feel like your right leg has more stable power and your left leg has more fluid power, because those were the actions that you were just exploring. And then go ahead and open your eyes, and let's play around with that on the other side. So take your left foot up and push down into your left leg until your right leg, you might just have your toes on the floor, but you're mostly on your left leg. And then bring your hands to the top of your hips, and like before, push down and try to pull your right hip up. And as you do that, you might even feel a stretch through your left hip. The front of your hip feels like it's extending a little bit. Okay, and then bend your left knee, toe, heel, break your right foot down. Okay, and now push down, rise, and it's not just level hips, it's right hip pulls up. Push down, or excuse me, lower down on the ball and then heel. Okay, so you're gonna push off, hover, and toe heel down.
Sorry, I missed that. Could you say it again, please?
Try that a few more times. And now you're gonna add, once you get that kind of feeling of that, and like I said before, you could do some arm motions here if that feels good. But now you're gonna add the options of your legs. So the next time you go to step down, move out to the side, put the weight into your left foot, and then push off and lift your, your right hip. And then put weight in your right foot as you squat, push off as you lift, okay? And so you can change your position. You can go forward, which might mean that your heel comes off, right? So there's not a distinct one leg size fits all thing. And in terms of your arms, you can also reach right? So we're not focusing so much on this right now, but picking things up as we squat down is a big thing, right? So you can even mimic some of that idea. When you squat, really hips down. When you push off, that gives you that stable center. So try a few more different directions. You can do forearms to thighs or opposite reach. This is one of my favorite moves, by the way. Okay. And then push down and land up on your left leg. Keep pushing straight down, and now you can add some cross, or what we call contralateral motion, so opposite limbs moving together. So when your right leg comes to the left, your left arm is crossing in front. Really push down through your left leg, especially when your right leg goes behind you. And you'll feel that lift of the front of your hip. Maybe it'll throw your balance off. Good. Nice, everyone. Okay, and then come down and pause. Keep both feet on the ground. You can shake it out. And then take that moment to really, it's not interpret, but really to just let a little bit of digestion happen. So it may not be metabolized yet fully, but you're letting it digest through you. So what do you notice? What are you observing? I'm gonna let your eyes open again if they're closed. Okay, this is an excellent moment to practice some squatting skills of transition. So find where both of your blocks are, and if they're close, then it's a 2-for-1. Otherwise, it's 2 squats. Squat down and catch hold of your blocks, and really focus on when you add that load of your blocks, that there's still weight in your feet, that your pelvis is back. Okay, and then stand up. Good. Now, I know everybody doesn't have cork blocks, but you probably blocks just add some feedback, whether they're weighted or not. And if you want something more weighted, maybe, grab your water bottle, or this cat or something that's willing to participate, small child. But let's practice a little bit of that. So take your feet. So this is where it's not classical yoga. I'm not saying your feet have to be X place and all that. I want you to just march in place, and knowing that you're going to be going up and down, what is the natural stance that your body wants to take? Because when you're out doing your activities in life, and obviously we're under the context of gardening, but be anything, you're not necessarily going to slow down that much and be like, I have to get my feet parallel and straight and do it only from that position. In fact, that's kind of the opposite. When you look at, a healthy ecosystem, there's a lot of diversity. So we want to have diversity in our movement patterns. But that being said, right now, just take a place where you feel solid and comfortable in your legs. And then have your blocks, out in front of you. And now as you squat, move your hips back, move the blocks forward a little bit for a counterweight, and then lower yourself down. So I don't care how low you go, but you're not trying to put your forearms on your thighs unless you really have to. Okay, and now take an inhale, and as you exhale, push down and stand up. You can relax the blocks in your sides. Okay, so let's try that again. As you inhale, move the blocks forward a little bit, squat, and then as you exhale, push down and stand. Squeeze your legs. Again, inhale, lower down. Exhale, stand up. One more like that. Inhale, lower down. Exhale, squeeze your legs and stand up. Awesome. Now stack the blocks and again, if they're very light and they don't feel like they're giving you that proper weight transfer feedback. If you have something a little more heavy that you can work with in your vicinity, you can try that. But I'm just turning the side so you can see the side view. And now I want you to place those blocks out in front of you. So right now, have them kind of like right, like if you were to reach your arms just slightly forward of you, they're right there. Okay? So you don't have to like telescope to get them. They're pretty much right underneath you. Okay, and now this time, so again, have your nice wider stance. Your feet can be turned out a little bit. Okay, now take an inhale breath. And as you exhale, come into that umpire squat. So forearms to your thighs. And then notice, and you can, use your own like screen as a feedback for yourself. You can look at yourself, but notice here what direction your pelvis is in. So some of us that have that tendency to flare our ribs forward, I'm demonstrating that right now, our pelvis is in that tilt position. But if I was to pick this up, and let's say it's 50 pounds or 25 pounds, I was to pick this up with a back bend, that load is gonna go right into my spine as opposed to my legs. So now push down and stand up because you've just been holding that while you watch me, okay? And now when you squat down again, try to squat down with the idea of mild flexion. So you're not trying to overly tuck your pelvis or overly and not in the direction of tilt. Okay, so on your next exhalation, squat down, put your forearms on your thighs, and do mild flexion. So mild where you start to feel the load through your feet and not in your lower back. Okay, and now reach down, gotta scoop them from the bottom, so you probably have to get a little lower than you started. Scoop down, take an inhale, and now as you exhale, put your forearms back on your thighs. So this is your midpoint. Okay, take an inhale breath, and now as you exhale, push down and stand up. Awesome. You just, now you have some skill for picking up your gardening items or whatever. Okay, so now let's reverse it. So holding your blocks in the front of you, take that inhale breath. And then as you exhale, forearms to thighs, squat. Okay, mild flexion, release the blocks. So you have to squat a little lower. That's it. And now push down. You can go right straight up because you're not holding anything heavy, so you can go all the way up. Okay, I'm going to come close and cue the same thing, but I want to kind of watch everybody versus demonstrating. Okay, so don't worry if your screen isn't right in the right spot. It's fine. All right, so take your inhale breath. And now with your exhale, move your hips back, squat, forearms to thighs. Okay, mild pelvic flexion or tucking. Okay, look at what you're picking up. And then that's important. And then reach down and scoop it into your hands. And then on an exhale, bring your elbows back to your thighs. Good, make sure the weight's in your feet. And then push down and stand all the way up. Good. So I'm gonna have you do that 3 more times. That looked really nice, everybody. Kind of at your own pace. Just so that you can really practice it without my cueing, because I'm not gonna be there with you when you're in the garden, right? And slow it down enough where you can really sense that your legs are loaded before you go all the way up. And eventually you can take out that middle point and just go straight up. But if you were trying to pick up something really heavy, you'd want that secondary placement. Good. Awesome. Okay, now the next time you squat down and you put your items down, stay low, and you can reuse the blocks as needed, but now straighten your legs. Come into a forward bend. So you can get creative if you have blocks here. You could put your head on them for more of a restorative version of a forward fold. You can adjust your feet. You can have your hands on the blocks. but squeeze your legs so that you really feel that you're not, it's not a passive stretch where we're just using gravity right now. Try to engage your legs so that your hamstrings and the attachments behind your knees, where your hamstrings connect to and eventually become your calf muscles, have that range of extension. So a lot of times our knees, because we just do a lot of passive sitting, don't get to go through their full range. Okay, and then shift your pelvis. So we did this kind of when we were on all fours. Shift your pelvis. You're still in a forward bend. Shift your pelvis left and right. And the next time your pelvis is to your left, where you have more weight in your left foot, move your hands to the right. So you get a little stretch through the outside of your hip on your left side. Okay, and then turn. So now you're going to move your hips to the right and turn your upper body to the left. So your hips, there's more weight in your right leg. And then go back and forth a couple of times. So again, your speed can be whatever feels good to you. So now you're shifting your pelvis side to side, and you're also side bending. So your ribs are going through a little bit of not only rotation, but a side bending action. Now come to center, put your hands, and if you don't have blocks, you could use a chair here. It would just be a little higher. But if you can see out of my blocks right now, in fact, I'm gonna turn this up even higher. So I have one block on the lowest setting and then one block on the highest setting. Bring your feet so they're underneath you. And you're using the blocks to keep your shoulders supported, and your upper body supported rather. So this is kind of the same thing we did, but from a slightly different perspective. So this one's called scales. And push down into your left foot, and now pull your right leg up so that your right hip, if you feel it, it's going to be higher than your left. Okay, and then lower it back down. And then do the same thing, same side, push down for your left leg, pull your right leg up. And some of you might even feel like you can tap the block in front of you. You can try that. And then release it and put it down. And then one more time, same side, lift your right hip, right leg, tap or not, and then lower it back down. Okay, and then try, shift your weight into your right foot, push straight down, lift your left side of your left leg up, and then lower it down. Just get that rhythm before you add the tap. And then lift up, option to tap, release and lower it down. And then one more time, push down so your left hip is pulling up higher than your right. Maybe tap, and then lower it back down. Okay, push down, stand up, so you can come out of that flexion. And I'm just gonna quickly demonstrate this one, and then we'll all do it together. So it's just a building up of that one we just did. So I'm gonna go back here, just watch me really quick. And now I'm gonna add more volume of motion here. So this time I'm going to push and lift, tap and lengthen. Maybe keep my balance as I do this. Okay, tap and lengthen, tap and lengthen. And you can tap other parts of the block. You can take it off center. So you can see as I'm doing this, my spine is not neutral. It's going through flexion and extension, particularly a lower calf. Okay, and that's the thing that people get, I think, misunderstand, is that our spines, our hips and our spine are meant to flex and extend, but a lot of times we get kind of locked in our hips, so we end up using the same area repetitively. And that's why after doing, we get that, you know, that's where injuries are often. They're repetitive injuries from doing this, the shape, but using the same groups of parts of our body over and over without diversifying it enough. So you can stretch those metaphors out if you want to, but we'll just get into the movement now. So let's start again. So hinge at your hips, and then place your hands to the blocks. Okay, so make sure that your pelvis or your legs can support you. The weight is in your legs. And then push down through your arms. Okay, and now push into your left leg and lift your right leg up. Tap the block and reach your leg back. You can point your foot there and then tap and lengthen. And so again, you can tap and look down so that you're not moving your head all over the place, just to keep your neck neutral. And then breath-wise, you can play with that, but generally speaking, it's exhale to draw in, inhale to lengthen away. And then the next time you bring your leg towards the block, go ahead and lower it down. And then you can just shake out your hips. We're going to go right into the other side. If you want to shake them out side to side, you can. And then let's try side two. So push down into your right foot, hover your left foot so your pelvis is off center. And then tap the block and reach away. See if you can feel how your pelvis is motioning. So it's not just your lower back flexing and extending. It's your pelvis moving through, tucking and tilting. Good. And moving slowly helps with just gathering the information. And obviously if you have some, injury or something, that might be useful. But in a progressed way, you can add speed tethered to, a little bit of attention to detail. Okay. Great. And then you can go ahead and lower. And then this time, go ahead and bend your knees. Option to scoop up your blocks, but not required. Okay, and then push down and stand all the way up. So now you're vertical again. Awesome. So I came off my mat because I have the wall really close. So I'm just going to scoot back onto my mat. Assuming you're on your mat, have your blocks and come to the front edge of your mat. And you can put them down on the highest setting. Check my time here. Okay, so I'm going to do one more. This one is really to set you up for an option for how to maybe be when you're doing things on the ground, like leading. That always seems to be one that you can spend a lot of time doing. Okay, so from your hips, bend forward, place your hands on the blocks, and you can put a little bend in your knees if straightening your legs is a lot. Again, if it pulls you into flexion, then put a little bend in your knees so you're neutral. Okay, and now press down into your left foot and take your right leg back behind you. So obviously you wouldn't be doing this in your garden. This is a transition. Okay, bend your right knee and bend your left knee, and now tap your right foot on the floor. Then lower your shin, move your pelvis back, sit on your heel. Okay, now I know not for everybody this is going to be like a totally comfortable place. So you could end up playing with your blocks here. I'm just going to turn so you can see here. So this is called half primal squat. So my left hip is free of anything, and my right sitting bone is on my heel. And for some of us, that's just too much, either the ankle or the knee. So you can stick a block underneath. Okay. So this can be an option, or it could be an option like this when you're out doing your things that are in front of you. Right? You can even practice that, right? And in this methodology I trained in the last couple of years, we call it popping bubbles. So it's this proprioceptive skill of reaching and grabbing, but you could just weed. you can practice your weeding. So this can be your base, and you could be over here, lunge into it, come back out. You can stretch your leg, reach over. here. So now when you're in your garden, and we didn't go through all these specific movements right now and break them down, but you can see your squat lives here. So even though we're only on one foot and our lower leg, there's still the same actions happening. You're pushing against gravity to lift, and then you're loading your legs as you lower. So the actions transfer over to the shape, right? And then when you reach, we don't want to be looking up with our neck and, you know, like let your eyes look, even though your neck can remain neutral. It's not that you always have to stay like that, but that is something to take note of when you're doing your tasks, okay? So if you have the block, and you know, if you're out in the field, you could figure out brick or something in lieu of that if you can't sit all the way down. Okay, so now from here, push down, shift forward, and assuming you have something there, you're going to take it away. So now you're here. How are we going to transition? Right, so tuck your back toes under, shift your weight back, hands down, push down, stand up so you're not in a parallel feet, right? This is kind of where we practice our like lifting and lowering on the block. You're not always going to be level and even all the time. Okay? So let's just practice going up, or sorry, going down one more time from this kind of off-centered position. Okay, so there might be various ways that you map this out, so I'll just cue it, but if you need to adjust it, adjust it. Okay, so your aim is to get down. Okay, so keep the weight in your back foot, squat, then hands, shift your weight forward, point your right foot, and go back. Right, so you're transferring your weight into your arms, back into your legs, and so forth. Okay? So that would be one way, and if you were carrying something, let's imagine we have a pot or something in our hands, you can use your block. So now you're going to have to figure that out. So if it's too heavy where you can't just do it in one hand and use your arm, this might not be the right position for you to transfer, right? But assuming that you can kind of play with this a little bit, you're going to shift forward, move your left foot forward, and then tuck your back toes under and push straight down to come up. So you're in that lunge, right? And then you can practice lowering back into the lunge, and then pushing down and coming up. And then one more time, go down, and then go ahead and release. And let's stand back up. We're going to go through that on the other side, so just adjust yourself. And then push down into your right leg, lift your left leg up behind you, bend your knee, and then draw it, bend your right knee, and then tap your left foot, shift your weight back, lower down. And then again, you're going to see how this side feels, very different side. Okay, and you can practice your weeding, your reaching, stretching. I don't have wall space on that side, so let me turn around. Right, so you can be over here, grab, come back, reach, move forward. You might even rotate, right? Like you're doing something out here and you're like, oh, I left my clippers over here, so you're gonna go back and reach for them, right? So think of all the novel ways that you might just be out there and, you know, forgetting something or needing to reach. And this gives your base, right? So you come back. And you could be down here, I'm just adding one more little piece to this. If you were down here and you get tired or you need to change, right? So you change from here, you shift forward, lower your right knee, bring your left foot out to the side. Again, you're gonna have mild flexion, so that squat to stand we did earlier might be where you pay attention. Right? So you can even practice coming forward, shifting your legs and going back. Okay, and now grab your, make sure you have your left leg down so we can practice loading our leg for a moment. So grab your your block, your whatever you're using. Okay, and then push down and stand. Move your right foot, tuck your back toes, and then load your legs to stand. I feel like I missed a piece along the way here. Like we didn't do it on this side. Okay, and then see how it feels to go up and down a couple of times, right? So when you're going up and down, you might have to shift forward at first and get your knee down and then come up, right? So if your legs don't feel strong enough, you have to go up and down straight. But that might be something that you build the skill towards. So your back leg has a lot of the carrying weight. And then go ahead and shift back into your squat. I feel like I missed something. And now it's eluding me. Okay, and then you can shift forward and then come back to all fours. And then let's just quickly circle ourselves around again. So kind of where we started, and just notice as you go through those circles, is there more fluency? Is there a more mapped out terrain where you can really somatically sense your ability to, and even practice tucking and untucking? And even though we didn't do it on all fours, that idea of like shifting one hip and then shifting the other, or pushing one knee down and pulling the other leg up. I could spend 3 classes alone just on the lower body. We didn't even really get to like feet and ankles so much. But I wanted to start with our hips because they're the biggest in terms of our core. The lower, that's where we load all of our weight when we're walking, when we're carrying. That's really where it's bone-wise, joint-wise, where it starts. So I hope that this starting to churn your mind a little bit for just ways that aren't necessarily familiar. They might be novel, but they're available motions that you can build the skill towards. So timing-wise, we're kind of at the end of the class. So what I think I'll do, I wanted to do a plant meditation, but we run out of time. So what I'm going to do is do a recording one, and then I'll just record it, and I'll email it all to you so that you can, have that to explore with it on your own. Okay, so in lieu of that, let's go back to our backs. We'll take a short rest. So make yourself comfortable. And again, observe here, depending on how you started with your legs straight or with your legs bent, you might want to revisit the same one. And then observe when you settle down how your body receives the ground. So having moved yourself in somewhat subtle but very deep ways, how does your sense of well-being, how are you sensing your well-being right now? And can you yield a little bit more energetically to the earth? Can you sense the ground coming up to meet your body? And I'm going to let time and space be the teacher here, the guide. So just know that I'm still here and I'll be back in a few minutes. And you're still connected.
Start to bring your attention back into your body. Allow some motion, and a good morning stretch style of movement. Make your way back up to sitting. Let your seat be as potent as your rest. Notice if your attention is already moving away from where you are. And with love and compassion, healing yourself to yourself. breath to your body, your mind, your breath. As we begin to spiral out into the rest of our day, may we remember the quality of our attention, the noticing of how we moving through space, not so that we rigidly repeat those ways of being, but so that we affirm that this is a capacity we have. You can bring your palms if you feel called to do so. Bring your palms in front of your heart, otherwise just let them rest in your lap. And let this be an opportunity to set your intention for the rest of your day. And as you set your intention, may we continuously water and nurture our intention and watch it grow. So thank you for being here, and I look forward to being with you next week. All my best. Namaste.